Cafe, where we talk crime, suspense, and thriller writing. I'm your host, Debbie Mack, and today we have a really cool author who writes Hawaiian mysteries. However, before I introduce him, I would like to remind you that this is probably the last episode where I'll have to do this, but we are running a crowdfunding campaign right now. If you would like to contribute to it, please just check out my website, debbiemack.com, under Crime Cafe, or on my blog at debbiemack.com. And on that note, let me just take the time to welcome Terry Ambrose, the Hawaiian mystery author. And thanks for being on the show today, Terry.
Thanks for having me, or maybe I should say aloha.
Aloha, see.
By the way, I'm not in Hawaii. I'm actually in Southern California. I'm one of those Hawaiian wannabes. So
I was going to say you're a Southern Californian, but you go to Hawaii often. What prompted you to write Hawaiian mystery fiction?
Excuse me. I took a drink of water and it went the wrong way.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
I had written a thriller series, or a couple of thrillers, several thrillers, and really just was getting tired of writing something so dark. And I wanted to do something fun. And we had just come back from, gosh, I don't know, maybe our 10th trip to Hawaii. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to write a funny Hawaiian mystery. And so I came up with this character that was a former skip tracer. His life had imploded and he ran away to Hawaii to try and escape after things just kind of went south on him. He lost his job, lost his girlfriend, and he just thought he could escape. Well, he got over there and he realized he couldn't. But that was what prompted me to do it. It was just sort of a decision of I really kind of got tired of doing dark stuff and thought I'll try humor and see how that works. And I've actually really enjoyed it quite a bit. So.
Well, that's wonderful. That's awesome. I really admire people who can write funny things. And I thought your book was very funny, by the way. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, gosh, the old expression of timing is everything. It's actually pretty easy to write suspense or a thriller because you can always throw your character into a situation where somebody's holding a gun on them or something like that. But humor, you have to be able to take that situation and turn it upside down and make something funny out of it. And I think one of my all-time favorite TV shows was probably Castle, because they would do that. They'd have this incredibly tense situation, and all of a sudden you're falling off the couch laughing because they've done something that's so funny and outrageous, and you know that's never going to happen in real life, but it just works. And so that's what I'm always striving for, is to take those situations and just flip them on their head and make something funny out of it. And so
that's great. There's an old saying that dying is easy, but comedy is hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when you write comedy, you feel a lot of times when you write comedy, you do feel like you've died. especially if you read it to somebody and they look at you and go, huh?
Oh no. That does feel bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I got it and I thought it was funny. In fact, Honolulu Hottie, which is the one I read to me kind of like, almost like Jim Rockford in Hawaii. It had that kind of glib sense of humor to it. And why was it you decided to make your protagonist, Wilson McKenna, an apartment manager as well as an amateur sleuth with kind of Rockfordish tendencies, if you will?
I never really thought of him that way, but yeah, you're right. There is something there, kind of like that. It just never occurred to me before.
Any reason why you chose apartment manager?
Well, no, not really. it was something that I needed him to have a job where he could kind of be his own boss and go off and do things and maybe come across these strange situations. And in reality, the job as apartment manager hasn't done it. I mean, it hasn't helped him find any of the crimes that he's had to resolve. It's been more his connection to a character that was introduced in the first book, who turned out to be his best and only friend for about 5 years. And it's kind of like this guy's he's a local native of the islands, and through him, McKenna keeps getting these new cases. People show up and he goes, I want nothing to do with that. I want nothing to do with that. And the next thing you know, he's solving the case. You know, like it's like in Honolulu, it was a case of an old friend of his had come back to the islands and had gotten scammed through his own apartment manager, and so he calls on McKenna because now he's back. He's been accused of murder, and he says, "I need your help." And that's how McKenna gets involved. But once again, he doesn't want to be there. He's trying to get out of it, and he's always the reluctant amateur sleuth. So it's a fun role to write because it means that he's not just saying, "Oh, great, tell me more about the case." And actually, in Honolulu Hottie, he's got a partner that he's taken on, Chance Logan, who is that way. He's a PI wannabe, has a Magnum fetish, basically. If you notice the red Ferrari, the Tigers baseball cap, and all of this stuff that's very Magnum-ish. And McKenna is always wondering, does Chance want to be a PI because of Magnum, or does he want to be a PI because that's his life's calling? And he never really does find out, but it gives the two a nice juxtaposition of the one who really wants to take the case and has no experience, and the one who doesn't want to take the case and has the experience. So it makes for a nice partnership.
It does, very much. I thought Chance was a good foil for McKenna.
Yeah, Chance in the next book is kind of growing up, and he's maturing a little bit, so he's not quite so naive. But
Oh, good. I like to see that,
yeah, he's still a lot of fun.
Another thing I noticed about the book is that it really brings a sense of place in terms of the islands of Hawaii and what they're like. I really felt like I got to know Hawaii
Oh,
and some
good.
of the culture. You brought up, what was his name? Kimu?
Oh, Kimu.
And
Oh my God.
Kimu and the Hawaiian traditions. And I thought that was really cool. What sparked your interest in the culture of Hawaii?
I think from the moment there, I've always been fascinated by cultures and what they do. And I was an anthropology major when I was in college. And so I spent a lot of time, learning about different cultures and that sort of thing. So when we went to Hawaii and I heard about the legends, the Polynesian traveling there to, inhabit the islands, and all of this stuff, I really was kind of predisposed to have a fascination with it. And so when I started writing Photo Finish, I had no real intention of delving so deeply into the Hawaiian culture. But when I got into the book, I started realizing there was a real opportunity there to show people something about a culture that they may not typically see, especially if they're a tourist. They're probably not going to get much in terms of the depth of the island society and the beliefs, the myths, the legends, and how the people believe in ghosts and all of this stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And so I decided that the way to do that was to create this questionable character, and that's Kimu. He's been dead in the first book. He's been dead for 10 years, and he comes back and takes on McKenna as his afterlife hobby. self-improvement project, as McKenna keeps calling him. And so Kimu's role in the stories is always to show up in McKenna's dreams, stick him on a surfboard, and give him these very weird dreams that just make absolutely no sense at the time. But yet, as you go through the story, when you get to the end, you finally realize, oh my God, that all made sense. And a lot of it ties back to Hawaiian symbolism and the different things that happen. McKenna will see a bird and he'll wonder if that's Kimu come back to haunt him in a bird form, because the Hawaiians believe that their ancestors can come back in the form of animals, and they can choose which ones they want to be. So there are a lot of different options to choose from, and I just decided that having a really wacky dream scene in each book was going to be a lot of fun. And quite often the dream, I'll get about half of it written and then realize when I get to the end of the book, oh no, I've got to fill in a lot of details because there are more clues. And if you were really good at interpreting the dreams, after you read the dream scene, you'd know who the killer was. But it's so obtuse that I doubt that anybody can figure it out.
Yeah.
Until the end, and then you go, oh, it was so obvious. So
that's really a great way to plant clues.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And it just gives you so much behind the scenes knowledge of Hawaii that it makes the books all the more authentic. I love that. Did you ever do anything with your anthropology degree in terms of your career?
Not really, other than it helped me in business because I understood people more than a lot of people did. When people come out of college with a business degree, they understand business, but they don't necessarily understand people. When I was done with the anthropology degree, I understood how societies operated, how cultures operated, how people thought than many people did. So it helped in a lot of ways, and it made me more accepting of the differences in cultures. And so I think that has helped me as a writer also, because that makes it so that I can look at something and go, oh, that's an interesting fact. It might be something that would completely escape someone else, but because I tend to look for those kinds of things, I see them and I go, I can make use of that and add that into the book. On Honolulu Hottie, one of the things behind that was a conversation that I had with a guy who used to be a veterans benefit analyst. And I came across an article in AARP magazine a few years ago, and it was about veterans benefit scams. And I was so fascinated by the article that I contacted him and I said, I want to talk to you about doing an interview so I can plug some of this information into a book, because I always like to touch on a really good issue in a book. He gave me so much information that I went, wow, I've got more than one here. But in Honolulu Hottie, we got into the veterans benefit scams as they relate to medical care and long-term trusts and all of that kind of stuff, and how the veterans get taken advantage of by these con men, sometimes willingly and sometimes not. And so that was the big issue behind the book. And when you get to the end, you know a lot more about that, but I try to do it in a way that's entertaining, and I don't like standing on the soapbox and saying this is good, this is bad. I let the characters do the talking, and they get to argue it out on the page.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting about the anthropology degree. Did it help you in your career as a skip tracer?
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. When you understand people on a more of a macro level, mm-hmm. That's one thing. But to understand how someone is going to react when they don't want to pay you, because I was doing skip tracing for debt collections, so these were people who just didn't want to pay their bills. that becomes a different motivation. That really is an art, or at least it was an art unto itself. And my very first day on the job, I was working as an assistant manager for beneficial finance. And my boss handed me a stack of loan cards, which were about 8 by 5, I guess. And on them, you wrote everything that happened on an account. And my job was to go through this stack of 50 loan cards, call all these people, make arrangements for payment, and turn the cards back to him when I was done, which I did. I handed him the cards. I'd gone through all of them. I said, they're all set up, or I know when they'll be home, and they're all going to be taken care of by Friday. And he said, we'll see. And I went, what do you mean, we'll see? And he goes, we'll see. Friday rolled around, nobody had paid. And so that was my first real lesson in life about people lying to me.
Oh.
And so that became another education process, because I learned over time that anybody would lie under the right circumstances. And, when I hear people say, well, I would never do that, I just go, we'll see, because you just have to be in the right situation, and you'll pretty much do what you need to do to survive, because that's our instinct, is to survive.
As
So
a former practicing attorney, I can totally appreciate what you're saying.
So I learned a lot of times. I had a lot of people lie to me, and so a lot of those
Oh
lessons
yeah.
in the McKenna books.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Human nature. Uh, well, to get back to your books for a moment, what's your latest book about?
The latest one is called North Shore Nanny, and it comes out on August 30th. And that's the second. No, it's another novella in the Trouble in Paradise McKenna mystery series. And it too deals a little bit with the veterans benefit scams. It touches on the Madigan Army base debacle of many years ago, where there was shoddy care and there was nepotism going on. And I decided that the best way to deal with that was to bring in one of the nurses who was fired from that hospital. And I did that and put her in the position of a nanny. And so her charge is a 10-year-old surfing sensation. And the premise behind the book is that some secrets are best left as secrets. And if they're uncovered, there are going to be people that don't want them known. So when the nanny is framed for murder, the 10-year-old hires McKenna to solve the case. And it just becomes this hilarious journey through his investigation to figure out who really killed the big nanny boss. Was it the CIA or someone else?
I love the way you take serious issues and manage to make them comic. I love that.
Yeah,
It reminds me of Carl Hiaasen.
Yeah. I'll take that as a compliment.
Absolutely. I love Carl Hiaasen, and he deals with some pretty serious issues in his books.
Yeah.
His books are hilarious.
Yeah. And I talk to a lot of authors and I say, well, what's the issue behind the book? And they say, oh, I don't deal with issues. I just write for entertainment. And I think you're really missing the point here, because what's the point of reading a book if it's not really about something? And so to me, you don't have to stand on a soapbox and lecture people about it. What you have to do is you just have to put the issue out there and then let the characters play with that issue. And in Carl Hiaasen's case, he makes it hilariously funny. And you just go, well, that's it. And it takes it to the point of the bizarre. But that's what's so great about writing, is you can pretty much do whatever you want to with an issue, as long as you keep let people suspend their disbelief and don't make it so outrageous that they just go, that's just simply
preposterous. Yeah. Yes. Excellent. That's really excellent. Thank you. That's wonderful advice for anybody who wants to write that kind of thing. And to get back to your old work as a skip tracer or possibly repo man, because I noticed you mentioned sometimes people's cars would go missing.
Yes. Did that. Been there, done that.
What's the weirdest situation you ever dealt with as a skip tracer or repo man?
The the most well, I once had a rather scary one where we were I was driving a car back from Seattle to Spokane, and the guy whose car it was had blown up a church, but he had been arrested by the FBI, and I found out many years later. In fact, just this past year, so this has been like 30 years. Um, I met the FBI agent that was in charge of that case while I was at a Sisters in Crime meeting. So that was really strange because, and I was telling him about this, and he goes, "I remember that guy," and so it was pretty bizarre. But the weirdest one I had where I was personally involved was we went up. It always takes two to do a repossession like this because one of you has to drive your car up, and then one has to drive, their car back. So you've got two people, and we went up into the mountains behind. It's called Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and it's a little dirt road. It goes snakes up the side of this mountain, and it does a lot of switchbacks. And when you get to the top of the mountain, these people had put their little trailer up there, and they were living in this trailer and basically living off the grid for the most part. Well, they didn't make their payments. We went to get the car. The husband wasn't home, but the wife was there. And when she opened the door, her rifle was sitting next to the door on the floor. And I took one look at that and I thought, holy cow, all those switchbacks. How many times can she take a shot at us? And so it was pretty freaky driving down. She gave us the keys, gave us the car. There was no problem. But for 15 minutes or so, I kept wondering, one, is she a good shot? Two, will she? And it all worked out for the best, but it was a pretty strange situation when it happened.
Wow, I can just imagine. I'm going to have to wrap up here, but before we go, two things. Number
Sure.
one, have you ever seen the movie Repo Man? And number two, what is there anything you'd like to add before we finish?
I have not seen the movie Repo Man. No,
You must.
I must. Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
It's funny.
Um, the other thing I'd like to add is that again, North Shore Nanny, it comes out on the 30th. I hope people will check it out. They can go to my website at terryambrose.com to learn more about me. And I do a lot of author interviews. I do scam tips, and I try to provide some really good information as well as talk about my books. So I like to give people a well-rounded experience, and I hope people will check me out and see.
Well, that's wonderful. And thank you again so much for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Um, so as I was saying, we're doing the Crime Cafe crowdfunding campaign right now. And we have some wonderful perks, including, if you're willing to pitch in the amount, a personal Google on-air, well, not on-air, but just a Google chat or other virtual meeting with your book club or readers group. I would be doing it. And so that is a perk that we're offering, along with t-shirts, coffee mugs, books. Check it out. The Crime Cafe crowdfunding campaign, the Crime Cafe Stories Project. And it's on my website at debbiemack.com under Crime Cafe or my blog. So, on that note, again, thank you, Terry, for being here. And it was a wonderful interview. And read his books because they're very funny. And until 2 weeks from now, take care.